Let's take a look at some of the pioneers of computing and find out how they contributed to the modern computing devices that we use today. While you're going through this video, you can answer the questions on your Pioneers of Computing task sheet. This is John Napier. He's a famous Scottish mathematician and is best known for the invention of logarithms in 1600. We still use logarithms today to help with different mathematical calculations, and the use of logarithms helped reduce the number of errors that people got in long and tedious calculations. John Napier is also credited with bringing the decimal point into common use. Today, modern computers and algorithms make frequent use of decimals and logarithms to perform calculations. Blaise Pascal is a French mathematician. In 1645, he invented the first mechanical calculator. His invention was used for calculating how much tax people needed to pay. It could add and subtract numbers by rotating a set of dials on the top of a box. This is Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz. In 1674, about 30 years after Blaise Pascal invented his mechanical calculator, he invented a machine called the stepped reckoner. It could not only add and subtract numbers, but it could also multiply and divide them as well. Joseph Marie Jacquard was a French fabric maker and weaver. In 1804, he had the idea of adapting the use of punch cards used in musical boxes and pianos to control his weaving looms. His invention allowed him to put multiple designs onto pieces of card which he could feed into his weaving machines. His new punch cards allowed him to control 1,000 needles at the same time. This is Charles Babbage. He is a famous English inventor and mathematician. He invented two machines, one called the differential engine and another called the analytical engine, that could add, subtract, divide and multiply lots of different numbers at the same time. Sadly, he wasn't able to complete either of his two machines. Ada Lovelace was the daughter of the famous Romantic poet Lord Byron. She was a brilliant mathematician, and she was employed by Charles Babbage to document all of the work that he was doing on his two machines, the differential engine and the analytical engine. It's thanks to Ada Lovelace that we now have the idea of modern computer programs. She came up with the idea that a machine could be programmed to perform lots of different tasks, even write poetry or compose music. She's recognised today as the first computer programmer. During the Second World War, two young British mathematicians met at Bletchley Park near Milton Keynes. One was called Alan Turing, the other was Tommy Flowers. Both Tommy and Alan were employed as code breakers at Bletchley Park. They used computational analytical models to try and work out what enemy messages from the German army meant. Tommy Flowers invented a computer called Colossus. It was the world's first electronic, digital, programmable computer, and it was huge. It took up a whole room. Alan Turing, who he worked with, went on to develop the computer that we call the bomb, that was used to decrypt the German Enigma codes. During his time at Bletchley Park, Alan Turing invented and created the bomb. This was a mechanical device that could intercept, decrypt German Enigma codes during the Second World War. It wasn't really a computer, It was just a huge mechanical device. However, after his work at Bletchley Park in World War II, Allen went on to study mathematics and teach computer science. And he came up with the idea that a machine could be designed and created that was capable of processing a stream of ones and zeros, or binary numbers, and would be able to solve any problem. In 1944, Howard Aiken was a professor of physics at Harvard University in America. He worked with IBM to build a computer called ASCC, or Automatic Sequence Controlled Calculator. His computer made use of relays, or tiny switches, which could be flipped backwards and forwards to represent mathematical data, ones and zeros. His computer was huge. It weighed 35 tons and had 500 miles of wiring. Because the computers that he designed were so big and they were purpose built for each company and for each job they needed to complete, they were really expensive. Howard Aiken was once asked about the future of electronic computers. He said that he estimated that 6 electronic digital computers would be sufficient to satisfy all of the computing needs for the entire United States. How wrong was he? Rear Admiral Dr. Grace Hopper worked with Howard Aiken from 1944 and used his machine to calculate gunnery and ballistic calculations for the US Army and Navy. She is credited with being one of the first female computer scientists and programmers. She worked on simplifying the programming needed for Howard Aiken's computers and came up with the first recognised programming language called COBOL. It used English words to represent different commands rather than binary ones and zeros. Grace Hopper is also credited with coming up with a really common computing word, debugging. She discovered one day that the calculations she was performing were wrong, and she investigated why these calculations might be wrong. What she found inside her computer that she was using was a moth that had flown into the computer and caused these errors. This is where we get the term bug and debugging from. In the 1940s and 1950s, computers used valves and relays to represent digital data. The problem with these is they could become very hot, and if you were not careful, they would blow up. Jack Kilby invented the first integrated circuit in 1959. It meant that computers could become much smaller and much more reliable, and removed the danger of components blowing up. At the age of 13, Bill Gates became interested in programming computers. He sold a computer that he had built and programmed to the city of Seattle that allowed them to count traffic on their roads. Whilst at Harvard University, he developed his own programming language for his computer. He decided to drop out at university so he could concentrate all of his time on writing computer programs, and he started a company called Microsoft. A little later, Bill Gates managed to convince IBM to distribute his new software called MS-DOS with all of their computers. Steve Jobs also dropped out of university at the age of 21 to start his company Apple with another college dropout, Steve Wozniak. In 1976, the Apple I was one of the first home computers that was available to buy. It cost around $600 and came in a wooden box.